Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the wallPen podcast, the art and business of vertical printing. As always, I'm your host, James Wright, and with me, as always, of course, is Mark Tisdale and Mark Klauser. Welcome, guys. Welcome. So,
James, good to see you again, buddy. It's been a little bit.
Good to be back.
yeah, a little bit of a summer vacay and taking a quick little break, but jumping right back into it. So, how you guys been doing?
Busy, which is a word that I think we've been using fairly regularly all summer. It has definitely been popping off. It's a lot of moving parts all at the same time. As you guys know, we've been running Concept Inc. Asheville with Liam, which has been fantastic. We'll dedicate some time talking about him. But we also just received our first shipment by sea, like by boat,
Nice.
which was a really fun paperwork exercise. Like, my God, the number of forms that we signed with acronyms, I have no idea what they mean. Like, it's impressive what it takes to ship that, but we've got them now, which is great. Hopefully we can keep that process rolling because that opens up a lot of interesting possibilities for our customers.
Yeah, this is big for us because it's the first time we're holding North American inventory. Up until this point, everything has been kind of order on demand, fulfilled per order from Germany. And as you know, we've been picking up volume and interest here in North America. Germany has opted to start housing inventory here in North America. So
That's awesome, guys.
If you do show up in Asheville, you could see a machine and potentially take it home that day
Well,
while inventory lasts.
Yeah, well, for sure. But what I'm noticing with the customers, because we did a bit of a shuffle, like we've sold other machines as well, and like if they weren't going to pick it up or weren't going to finance it, like we made other arrangements to air freight it because we really wanted to keep these in person, and that's specifically because like of the ones we sold, people are coming to pick up their machines to save on the shipping cost, but also to get trained, which is understandable.
Yeah.
I would probably feel the same way, but like we've got customers coming all the way from Detroit, but plans on spending a couple days, really wants to immerse himself into it, understand it, and like I think it's going to be interesting to see how we can create a hub. I really do. I want to create it where it's like you can come get the full experience. We'll give you as much information as we have. Like you can connect the dots, and that would be something that as the year progresses, we would be looking at hosting events and things like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. So like as soon as they get there, it's like full on like training. They can figure it all out with you guys.
First is an obstacle course. They have to get to the end. It's like America's Ninja Warrior, whatever that show is. No, yeah, they basically will roll through everything. In person, doing it. I think we call it Liam's wall now, but it's a big 40-foot wall that's printed stark white. That as much printing as you want to do, it. We can go through all the nuts and bolts of calibration. I think, Klaus, you agree? Like probably the hardest thing to do virtually of all the training is the calibration. It's because it's such a scoped, like you have to kind of see it and then talk about it of like what are you trying to achieve, what's reasonable, what's not reasonable, how do you fix those things. So it'll be good to be able to like set that up, and I'm hoping part of the thing we're trying to do, I'm just talking to Liam's cousin. By the way, Liam has like 800 cousins here. It's incredible how often he uses it.
Perfect. Keep it in the family.
You'd think he's Italian, Mark. Yeah. But he's got a videographer cousin who is apparently brilliant. So one of the things I do want to do, and as our users kind of follow our channel and stuff, they'll see hopefully more specific how-tos, and how to address, and like the manual is great. The training material Mark's put together is fantastic. It will definitely get you printing, but it'd be nice to put special emphasis on other things to get more of like, again, more like the long form discussion points of like, well, what do you mean by, I'll give you a good example. Again, just sort of launching into it here, but I was talking to one of our future customers out of Denver, Kyle. I don't know if whoever's editing this, let's put his name. I'll get it to you here. I can't remember what he actually is calling his company, but yeah, wherever we're going to put that. But he was asking me about the difference between like basically what's acceptable quality. He's like, okay, I'm thinking about this size. Is this going to work? And like, it was kind of hard to answer because I'm like, well, like, man, it kind of depends on a lot of factors. You know what I'm saying? It's like if the image is a watercolor, that's different than if the image is a photograph. And if the viewing angle and distance is like 100 feet versus like this is going to be like right next to somebody who's going to be looking at it up close, and it just sort of like brings, highlights the fact that like there's a lot of things that are like it's kind of hard to give you a go no go. It's very dependent on what you're trying to print and how it's being viewed and what you're trying to go for. And yeah, there's a lot of things that like as we progress this year that we're hoping to get a lot more information out there, a lot more discussion out there on top of this podcast and other things. But yeah, all good things.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was checking out all the stuff you guys are doing on Instagram and like the new space in Asheville. Like it looks amazing. It's awesome. And it's good that you guys have like dedicated like walls that people can come in and use. It's great.
We
It
don't.
looks good. And like Liam is crushing it, man. He's doing really great over there.
Liam is, yeah, he's fantastic. Anybody who comes to Asheville, I introduce Liam so that he can speak to it. So it's not just me trying to sell you a wall pen. Like you can talk to a guy who started 5 weeks ago. Like, what's been your experience? How's it been going? It's great, man. It's like Closet will laugh. It's like a classic. Like my shop is, I move in and then it's like I don't have shelves yet. Everything's on the ground. I don't have any time. I barely have chairs. Like I'm not going to pan around this room because like it's basically a desk with a computer. I'm like a bachelor living here. So yeah, we still got a long way to go to get this thing fully fleshed out, but yeah, it'll be a work in progress.
The important stuff's getting worked on though, so that's what counts.
No, exactly.
We've got machines and crates in the back. We got a wall with print ink on it. I mean, you really can't ask for more out of that. That's awesome.
I want to create the pit. Like what we're trying to create like somewhere where you could sit and watch the printing. Because like that's one aspect about it is like it's mesmerizing. Anybody will tell you like if you watch automation equipment operate, it's like very easy to just like sit and get hypnotized by it. So we want to create like a viewing pit where it's like when we sit and we're talking about it, we can be watching the thing go. Because right now we all stand with like our arms crossed, and I don't know. It's like how long do you want to stand there and watch something like that? You know what I mean? So a lot of fun ideas for how to build up the space.
Yeah, you guys get like make it like an art gallery. Get like one of those ottomans, you know what I mean? And like have it in front of you and just like sit and just have some wine and cheese and just watch it print.
Absolutely. Although around here, man, it's probably
more like tacos and beer.
Yeah, tacos and beer. Yeah, exactly. I guess we'll keep a bottle of wine for you, James, if that's what you want.
Yeah. Thank you.
James is fancy like that.
I don't even know if that's an insult, if we're being perfectly honest. Yeah, wine is delicious too. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some news on the wallPen Germany site about white ink. What is white ink? And actually, like to step back, I guess, can we chat about the ink itself and the machine? I know I'm here. I am just we're talking about like wine and stuff, but like another type of wine for the machine. I mean, like what? Tell me about some of the UV ink and how it works, and then let's jump into like the white ink and that new launch that Germany came out with.
Yeah. UV ink is
an expert here. Yeah.
Yeah. Spent a lot of time looking into ink. UV ink is unique in that it has a catalyst component that cures immediately with exposure to UV light. So if you're watching any videos of the wall pen printing, you're going to notice that there's a kind of indigo purple light that traces the head as it moves up and down the wall. That light is emitting UV rays, and that UV is actually curing the ink instantly upon application. As the drop leaves the nozzle and hits the wall, it's traced by the light and it cures instantly to a scratch resistant, waterproof, chemical resistant finish. It's almost like a small micro thin layer of inert material. And so that's it. Every time it prints, it cures. And with every pass, it's curing. So as you're seeing this print roll out behind the printer, you can go up and rub it and touch it, and it's cured. There's no smell. There's no VOC. And that's really the beauty and the power of UV ink, which this type of application, printing directly onto a substrate, is not possible really any other way. There's solvent inks. They have an incredible smell to them, noxious VOC. Water-based inks you can lick and smudge, but the beauty of UV ink is that it cures instantly and it's incredibly chemical resistant. It's the same type of technology you'd see in the real world on, say, your stove knobs or dishwasher, where you've got like letters and things printed. That's usually printed with UV ink. So it's an immediate cure and it's hyper resistant to things like heat and the chemicals and things that you'd have around a stove or a dishwasher, right? So that same technology in the real world is what we're using to apply to the wall. Super thin and incredibly resilient.
That's awesome. And then, so where's the white ink come in? Like why white ink? Like why is that important? And what are the benefits of that?
So there's two different ways of looking at the addition of white ink. There's what we would call a fifth channel, so you got CMYK, and then there's an extra slot built into the E2 for a fifth. And what that means basically is like, it gives you the opportunity to introduce some other element. So other cases across the industry that you might see being used there besides white ink would be like a varnish or metallic ink, or like it's basically your specialty slot. It's probably, I think, is a fair way of describing it. And you would set it differently in the artwork. So basically you have your typical graphic composed of CMYK. Then you've got this fifth channel that lets you isolate certain elements and add certain features to it. So white becomes a fifth color being added to it. So now instead of just being blue, you can be blue and white. Instead of just being magenta, you can be magenta and white. So it just gives you a wider range of color. If you think of it that way,
That's
it's pretty
cool.
good. While also enriching the white in an image, right? So right now with just CMYK, or I should say right now with CMYK, you're relying on the background color to be your white. So it's only as pure and white as the color of the paint behind it, right? So if you have a bit of an off-white or an eggshell or whatever, what have you, that's what's going to be represented as white. Whereas now you could technically introduce white as so it's pure. So it's basically like a pure white, which will it'll help with certain designs, make it more vivid. The other thing white does is, and much more the more relevant one I would say going forward, is the ability to lay a base coat ahead of your color. So if you're printing on black paint, right now we can't, CMYK won't show up on that. It'll just kind of be like a stain basically. With the introduction of white ink, we lay white just where the image is going to be and then print on top of that so that you get those true colors popping, which is insane. It's probably the biggest development since the launch of the E2 itself is the introduction of white by far.
For sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. So that's like it's like the special. You take the ink, put it into the specialty slot, and then it just gives you more options to print on like darker surfaces and everything else.
It does a lot of things. It introduces a lot of capabilities. What I'm highlighting is just like the main ones, but there's a lot of other things that it opens the doors to, which is great. But the biggest one is being able to print for anyone who's like listening to this. The most relevant aspect of it is now I can print on things that aren't white and still get true color. That's probably the biggest thing that it's offering, which is huge when you think about other applications.
That's awesome.
Creatively as well, which is just something just a personal interest in artistic styling. But I like the kind of faded white paint effect that you can get on things like brick and wood and those types of things. So just by if all you're doing is printing white, the ability to now print those types of colors directly onto a natural brick surface, and you get this what would otherwise be a weathered paint look. I think it's just going to be so cool to be able to play with.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And in terms of like opening doors, you guys were talking about off the wall. So what is off the wall? Let's talk about that, because I think that's really interesting. I saw like a recent post, and I don't know, it looked cool. Just opportunities for operators and entrepreneurs to use something a little bit new.
Definitely a fascinating aspect of our project that hasn't really gotten the attention or the love that it's owed. And it's all possible. True. Yeah, it is. It's the middle child of our organization. Yeah. But what we have basically it's like this: when you want to print on something that isn't the wall, you need the lasers to be actively engaged to maintain the distance. Right, the printhead does this, and we like to maintain 5 millimeters roughly off the wall as it prints. And in order to do that, the lasers have to have basically in plane, so that as it goes up past your object, it has the ability to it's not gonna try to like do this every time, which throws off your thing. So what we had to come up with is a way of, how do you grab something? You know what I mean? Any rectangle, any size, how do you do that and also surround it with a laser reference so that you can just drop something in there, print on it, and you don't have to like, my God, the ridiculous solutions we've used to try to create this laser barrier, like painter's tape and poster board. And I'm sure I can get you some photos of some of the stuff we've done. It just doesn't work well, and it's super annoying and frustrating trying to set this up this way. So we endeavored about 3 years ago, we started this path. We were printing, I'm sure we've talked about this before, but we were printing school doors, these big, like 150 pound steel doors. And we needed those laser references. So Mark and his dad like rigged one up, and it worked. For how many doors did you do? You must have done like 10 or 12.
I did over 20 doors with that. Yeah. Like MDF. MDF, garage, assembled. We called it the rig at the time because we didn't have a better name for it. It was big, it was beefy, it took up half the back of my car. It was a pain to move around, but like it worked. It was like it generated over $40,000 worth of revenue in just door printing.
Wow.
alone. Yeah. So it was a huge solve for us, but it obviously wasn't a practical solution to the problem we were trying to solve. It was definitely a Band-Aid solution.
It left a lot to be desired on the setup and execution of like, you really want to, as any operator will tell you, like the best feeling in the world is hitting go on a print, knowing that like this is going to go great. And if you have anything where you're like, man, I really hope I calculated that right, you're going to be sitting there for 5 hours sweating like, God, I really hope I read that tape measure correctly, or like, you know what I mean? So we really wanted to create that confidence level on printing on stuff, right? And there was the doors is a good example, but we also wanted like anytime we were presenting the tech outside of our space, like if you're not going to go around the wall, it'd be nice to be able to leave people canvases, or, you know, you can see how if we were at a trade show, like printing on a wall, fine, but being able to print on stuff and give it handouts, there's a lot of reasons. And then it got us thinking like, well, what can't you print on? You know, we could really be a sign shop if you think about it. So 3 years ago, we endeavored on it. We came up with what we call the ultimate easel, which is a really nice aluminum frame that rides smoothly, clamps any piece. And Mark, what would you say the last time you used it? You told me you did what, like 10 pieces over what time?
I did 10 pieces, nine pieces in an afternoon. Different sizes, different objects, in like 5 or 6 hours. Yeah.
And when you think about it, a lot of that's just printing time. It's hard to say, like the setup time is what is so easy. Yeah.
Actually, a lot of that was I was doing the graphics as I was going. Like nothing was nothing was set up. A lot of it was just like I was applying it if everything's ready to go, I could have gotten it done in under 3, like easy.
Right. Exactly. The point being, like, if you wanted to rotate through objects, like the setup of the object is no longer going to be a concern or take anything more than like 5 or 10 minutes, which is huge. Right. Like that's anyone in a production setting, anyone who is trying to treat this like a sign company. And I'm sort of circling back on why the easel is so crucial is because like, if you knew that it was really simple and easy, well, printing in your own shop is a lot simpler than going to site for obvious reasons. Like it's a controlled environment. There's a lot of reasons why you want to do that. Now it's like, so what if I told you got an order for 20 canvases? Let's just say for whatever reason. Okay, without our ultimate easel, kind of a hassle. Like that's a full forge, and you're going to try to figure out a way to do it with the easel. You're delighted because it's super fast. The easiest printing you can do would be printing with our easel in your machine. So it opens the door to being like, okay, well, let's just go out there and say like, maybe we are a sign company. Like who's to say this isn't a sign company in your garage? I mean, what are the limitations? That's like, what could a sign shop UV flatbed do that ours can't? Right, and do a comparison between the two. And the reality is, we designed this thing to take sheets of plywood. 4x8 sheets of plywood can fit this thing. So there's not a lot. I mean, admittedly, the flatbed UVs probably have some like, I don't know, some features and things that you would do for a sign shop. But when you do a apples to apples comparison of cost, and then the fact that like this doesn't need a brick and mortar location, it doesn't need to be a dedicated space. Like you can literally set this up in your garage, do an afternoon of printing, bring it all back down to bags and put it in your closet. It's like, it's a pretty fascinating idea to like, let's run this as we're going to sell stuff on Etsy. We're going to sell things on Facebook Marketplace. We're going to take objects into our shop, use our easel, print on them, and away we go. And with white ink now, right now, like it's pretty much anything goes as long as it can fit in the rig. Like, you'll be good to print on it.
Yeah, it started for us as this, like Mark said, as a solution to printing on doors. It evolved as a way to print on just about anything, and now we're starting to get production facilities reaching out to us to include it into their production lines in ways that we would have never even imagined. We've got a customer right now that's printing 6,000 square feet of 2x2 concrete floor tiles. They are building a mosaic of flooring using the printer and the easel. They've got 2 easel setups. They're doing 2 tiles while they set up the other, and it's going to be a 2-month on site because these are concrete tiles. So the logistics of packaging and shipping these things to go somewhere to print are, insane. So they got them to site, they set up, and as they print, they install, and it's incredible. I mean, like I would have never in a million years imagined that to be the application, but sure enough, I mean, this company exclusively bought the printer for this application. And then, on the back end of this project, they've got now an amazing printer with an easel that can do, a whole slew of other things that they're looking to expand into. But super, super cool. And again, one of those things where it's like, there was no way we would have imagined that, but they came to us, we showed them our solution, and they're like, that's exactly what we're looking for.
I'd be
That's so awesome. Yeah.
I'd be remiss not to shout out my old company, Dirt and Folk Build. If any, because I'm gonna put this on LinkedIn, and I know you guys all watch this stuff. All right, I'm scoping as people are watching this. Like one, if your immediate question is gonna be, can I take a dirt tile that's already been installed, or a Folk Build tile, or really any prefabbed square piece of MDF? We could take those off of existing spaces, put in the easel print, and put it back easily. Like, depending on the size of the tile, but we print at 30 square feet an hour. So we can really, it's like 20 minutes of printing for the average size tile from what I remember. So big shout out to that. Anyone in the prefab space that's thinking about offering something where someone could spruce up what they already have as a
Yeah.
on-site dirt solution or folk build solution, like 100% we could go and sit there and do all the printing on site if you needed to. Yeah.
That's so cool. I love hearing about these, like, I don't know, these tips from customers themselves, because it goes back to like what you're saying. It's like you're just not, you're not always thinking of those things, right? And someone else might be watching this podcast or seeing something online or whatever the case may be, like, you know what? I think this is the solution. And like it seems to be coming up more and more often with the wallPen, which is like totally awesome. I love it.
What's funny with this one is, we'll have discussions with prospects who become customers, and we pitch them the easel, and they thought, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Like that'll be something I'll consider down the line.
Yeah.
Let me get started. And as soon as they get their printer, as soon as they try to print on one thing that isn't a wall, we get a call and we're shipping them an easel. It's like it's a solution to a problem that you becomes incredibly apparent as soon as you start using this printer. And it is by and large, you try to rig up something as a stopgap, and it is by and large the fastest, simplest, easiest solution. And for the relative cost, I mean, it's a no brainer. And
we know this for sure because we've used ones that don't work. The only reason we have one that does work is because I can't stand trying to print on something that isn't done with an easel. It's just like, as soon as you have it, and even a little bit, it's like, man, we got to dial this thing in, because I'm never going backwards. I'm not going back to trying to like hang it on the wall and tape it, or no, that's over. We're going to solve this. So it's because of how many failures we've had. And it's the kind of thing that's easy to think, like, I know what I want it to do. A whole different thing of trying to rig something that's actually going to be like where it's better than painter's tape.
Yeah. There's definitely been instances where I've been at the wall for over 45 minutes holding up a sheet of plywood that I tried to double-sided tape. I put like 30 3M command strips on there, and you see it just start giving away, and you have like if you're mid-print on a $250 piece of plywood, like you have no other option other than to just sit there and hold it the best that you can. Pray to God, like once you do that, well, you're like, no, this has to be solved.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
I want to see some of those ceiling tiles. I think we talked about that before, like the ceiling tiles, right?
Man, I've been talking about ceiling tiles. I've been talking about prints back here, so I don't look like I sit here talking about printing and I'm sitting in a white space. It's embarrassing. I'm not even going to show you the front of our shop. Like literally nothing's getting printed. And I don't want to blame Liam, but let's be honest, it's basically his fault. No, it's
that should be his next project. Yeah.
The fascinating thing on that space is we've been doing a lot of work with creating images with Midjourney. That's been like a massive thing for our organization and team, is to try to like lead the charge on some of this AI graphic work.
Right.
So we haven't really dedicated a lot of time to like finished pieces here, because we've been doing a lot of one-ofs of like, will this look good? What happens when we scale this up? It's been I have to hand it to Liam. He's been leading the charge on it. It's a lot of R&D that he's been doing. Fascinating stuff, fascinating like results, and like we're just tip of the iceberg thing on what we're been able to produce and where I see this going forward. Very interesting stuff. Yeah,
that's so crazy. And I guess that would probably, does that tie in at all with like creative services at all, or
well, I mean, so that's one of the aspects of probably the biggest thing we're developing this year, now that the technology is stable and it's like a lot less about, and we have some infrastructure around training and answering questions and things like that. That's pretty straightforward. Now it's all about like, how can we support operators? How can we open this machine up to other applications? And if you're not an artist, like, okay, well, it's, if you don't know Photoshop, like if you don't know these things, it's fine. You can learn it. But like, we'd love to be able to offer you a stopgap of like, you can just contract it to us to do it. That's the basic idea behind premium design services. It's just like, we know the machine. We've been doing this for 5 years for customers in very real spaces. Like, we know the process. The key is to get a flat rate. The key is like, you just can't pay by the hour. Like, you have to pay by the project, because that way you can factor it into the presentation to the client, right? You could just say it's $500 or whatever you want to do with that. So yeah, it's a big part of what we want to do. Not necessarily for the finished product. I will say that's not really the objective. Although that would be great. I think that's going to take a lot longer and a lot more work before we're finished. What I really like using it for, and we were talking about this, I think with Tim Jeffs, is I like the idea of getting like 80% of the way through the graphic, of like really honing in on what they want and having a very snappy way to give them options of like, once you pick the panda, what do I have on my wall? Once you pick the panda in a hoodie painting, I don't know. Liam picked it. Don't ask me. I don't know. Like once you know that, like cool. Now we're really specific on the guidelines of what we need someone to work on. So it's like I still think there'll be a human element and an artist element to these things, but when we can give like really clear instructions of what we want, it's going to be so much easier to get that finished, polished product done, which is probably the biggest challenge right now.
And humans are generally visual, so being trying to explain a graphic versus seeing a graphic, even if it's in its iterative first version form, helps put the pieces together. Where if you have a verbal conversation about it falls. Our interpretations are inherently different, So we've always tried to present customers with, visual options, option A, option B, option C, whether it's pulled from the internet or what have you. And some of these new tools available online now allow us to do that in a much better way, much faster, and a lot more specific to the application that we're trying to design for.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess it's just really about helping the operators get from point A to point B and just get that print.
I call it the gap. Yeah. It's from this person's excited and they want a print to like, when are you putting ink on the wall? Like that's, if you talk about anything that's probably got the biggest momentum challenge for a sale in wall printing, it's closing the gap. It's making sure that like you can get them something that they're going to sign off on as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's it. It's thinking about it as if you're charting excitement. You show up to a business, you show them the technology and the excitement peaks, and then from that point to getting a print on the wall, you really end up in this, what we call the gap, right? There isn't a whole lot of excitement happening until the printer shows up on site and prints. What we want to do is keep the customer excited. We want to maintain that excitement level all the way to printing. And then to do that, you got to keep them engaged on the artwork. You got to be showing them progress and something that they can kind of grab onto to know that that's what they're going to be getting. And then as soon as you show up and print, then excitement's off the charts, right?
Yeah,
just like
definitely
seeing it come to life.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I was going to ask about I guess we sort of touched upon this like in the beginning of the podcast, but like how are things going? Like in terms of like sales, like how is like operators coming on board? Like how's that all going? Like now that you guys have like shipments, obviously I guess one of the big signs is that you have like, inventory, local inventory, but like how are things going with operators? Like how are they adjusting to it and learning curves and things like that?
Yeah, I would say as far as getting them trained up, getting machines, like that's becoming a very well greased machine, having done it a bunch of times. We're selling more than ever and having fewer problems by a country mile. It's been great. That's a testament to a number of things, but just like the natural progression of what I'm sure people could kind of figure out, which is like Germany has done tons of work on their end to get these machines and QC process and all kinds of different things that have contributed to that. And they've done a phenomenal job getting these machines ready and out the door and, ready basically to turn on and use, which obviously makes our life super easy, right? Mark's training videos that he put together is really a comprehensive video library. It's I refer to them. Like if I need to go and like remind myself, like, what's this thing do? I would go watch what Mark put together because honestly, it's easier than calling him, frankly. And then,
perfect. They worked. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, the last thing that we're building out, and we'll be touching on this, I'm sure, as we go, but is like basically now we want to put operators in contact with operators. So it's like as people are trying things out, like I'll give you an example. One of the big ones that we just have to solve, and I can tell you right now, Liam's going to be on it, at least as far as Asheville is concerned. But one of the things we want to be able to get really good at is really good instructions on is inside corner to inside corner. That is a particular style of printing with the wall printer that requires an intermediary step. So if you want to maximize this corner here, you can see, if you want to maximize 2 inside corners, what you have to do is middle of the print, you have to swap the print head to the other side, right? Otherwise you won't get inside to that nice tight corner.
Right. Yeah.
If this is my machine and this is my print head and I'm going to this corner, right? That's as far in as I can get. But if I take the same thing, right, and I swap it over here, now I've got this margin. But that leaves you with, okay, so how does that swap happen? Like, what's this magic fairy that comes in and just blends two images perfectly together? And that's possible. We always tell people, yeah, 100% it's possible. Like, kind of more the advanced side of wall printing, of like, how do you set up the image? How do you reference it correctly? What's an appropriate image to try versus what isn't? Because there's degrees of like, if you're trying to get grid graph paper to line up, that's significantly harder than like kind of a busy image where, you know, any sort of irregularity is less exposed. That's true across all printing, frankly, but like in particular here, trying to line up things, the human eye will pick it out if it's like a very clean image.
Yeah.
So that's a good example of the kind of thing that like, I am sure we can come up with a solution between Liam and I. Like we'll sit here and Mark with Sukpao in Toronto. Like we could bounce that amongst ourselves. But if we got like 8 of our operators on that as like, hey, it's a challenge, you know, somebody wins a contest, like someone come up with a really, really good process and like demonstrate it, you know, and maybe we do a grid, maybe we make it super challenging of like, and dial that in. That's more of a community challenge of like, I'm sure I can give you instructions, but the reality is at some point we're going to have to start relying on the community to like, I don't know, man. We're not going to go through every permutation of printing. Like everyone's going to, you know, we got to be able to learn from each other. So that we're setting up an ecosystem where that can live and be more reference going forward than just our videos. Yeah.
And that's a great indicator of how our customers are doing. Because in the early days, it really was kind of low hanging fruit kind of questions. How do I get the printer started? I'm showing up on site. What are the basic things around printing? Now we're getting these, like I'm going to have a call after this with a customer who's trying to do 17 feet high and like 40 feet wide, inside corner to inside. Like we've got guys who are looking to max this thing out, which is incredible. It's exactly where we want to be, right? It's exactly the types of problems we want to be solving, and we want to be solving together, because as one person takes it upon themselves to take that challenge on, then the entire community benefits. And what we don't want to do is have that lost with a single customer. So as we use our experience and, you know, the gumption of some of our customers to take on some of these larger challenges, then we can build out a use case that is repeatable for everybody. And now we're just expanding the limits of what's possible with each printer and each customer. So we've got customers now that have taken this thing, you know, the basics are basic for them, and they want to push this thing to the limits, right? Can I print hanging from a helicopter? You know, all that type of stuff, right? So
side of a building came up in one of my conversations this week. I was like, Ken, I'm not sure that's where I would start. You know?
and sometimes that's the solution, right? You got to ask yourself whether or not it's worth pursuing. Everything's kind of possible. Is it worth the money, and is the customer going to get what they're looking for the price, right? But you know, those are good conversations to be having, and those are that's where Mark and I find ourselves to be, I think, the most excited. At least I'll speak for myself, but I can speak for Mark, is like at the edge of a technology. We want to be on the frontier of things. You know, we're really happy amongst ourselves to be kind of past the, you know, our initial training video stuff, which is now there, and we can rapidly get customers with us at the frontier. We need more people at the frontier of this technology to help push this thing forward. Because that's where we're going to start finding 6,000 square feet of floor tiles. And that's where we're going to start finding, you know, 17-foot high prints and sides of buildings and those types of things. Right. So,
or even like the e-commerce stores, you know what I mean? Like just using off the wall, like easels, and like just the opportunities are like totally endless. Just to get like more technical, because this is probably the more nerdy side of me. So when you flip the print head on it, are you still continuing at the same spot, or do you start from the other side and work your way back to the middle of the print?
Well,
or are you guys still trying to figure this out? I don't know.
Excellent question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Closer. Yeah.
I was going to say our initial answer to that when we get asked from customers is like, you're now trekking into the advanced wall printing kind of sphere, right? This is we're past the basics into the advanced. There's 2 ways of looking at it, and it's image dependent and space dependent. One option is you start your print, you pick a portion of the image that is the most forgiving for a transition, and you fade out with a, you know, call it a 10 centimeter fade, right? And then that ends the print, that ends the image after the fade. You then move the print head, line it back up to where that fade started, and you fade back in. Right?
Gotcha.
And then you fade back in, and then you keep printing. Getting that fade right is again very nuanced. It's got very detail oriented. It's possible, but it's easier with some images than it is others. And so that's one technique that is being used right now. Another technique that we've used once or twice, and I've seen a few operators kind of globally play with, is, again, image dependent. If you can pick a clean seam within your image, think of a city skyline, for example, right? Pick the side of a building, but don't go straight up, come across another building, up another building, and pick a hard line, right? And kind of give yourself a bit of a jagged edge. So now you print that first half with this jagged edge, and then you line back up, and then you can line up edge to edge, building to building, and you've got this thing. Your eye doesn't pick up a straight line because it blends in with the contours of your image, and you can print out the second half from there with, again, perfect alignment. You're getting within millimeter accuracy of alignment with the printer. So, very possible to be able to do it that way as well.
Okay.
And it makes it, and there's, again, you start to get into the techniques and things like having thin paper or tracing paper or contact paper, anything that's really thin that you can put on the wall that allows you to set the printer up on the second print and do a first few passes, push the paper on. You can see if your alignment is there, right? And you're good. The wallPen just implemented a return to start feature. So on their tablet, you do 2 or 3 passes. You're like, perfect, I'm dialed in, I'm lined up. You do return to start. The printer moves back to where it started, pull the paper down, and then you print, right? So there's steps as far as process goes that are making things easier. And then, what wallPen's doing a great job on the technological side, the software side,
right,
to add features that help operators do these types of things better, faster, and easier.
Yeah. Because I can imagine, like, first time operator, they'll get their training, but then I guess when they get like their first customer, they might be a little bit nervous, but knowing that there's an opportunity to sort of like test something out on site is like, that's amazing.
And it's important for people to remember, like, you're building a skill at the end of the day, right? Yeah. As the basics are basic, and you're going to get through. We're going to train you, and you're going to be printing on a big white blank wall in no time. That's a 1 day kind of exercise. As you start to get advanced, you're building out your skill set, you're building out your ability. So it's going to take practice. I encourage you to go and print at home or in low risk places and play with it. Understand how the printer works. Understand what steps you need to follow to make sure that you get the result that you want. And it's understanding how you work and understanding how the printer operates to be able to make sure that, the process is followed to achieve the results.
Yeah. I just, I'm thinking, like, both you and Tiz have so much knowledge about this. And I know this is going to come up in like later episodes, but we really need to get a competition going between the two locations of Asheville and Toronto. I think we need to do this. It's like, it's been we're episode 6 now. I think we just need to start building out a competition between the two of you guys to see who is the better printer. I don't know.
It's definitely Liam. At least I'm gonna coach on this one. Yeah. I think we could open it even further. I think we should do a wallPen Olympics. Let's start recruiting some of our counterparts over there. We'll do like, this is the challenge, and then maybe we'll get like a panel of judges out of the German team to be like, okay, guys, where are we at? Who won? We'll pick like the hardest stuff to do.
I like that. Yeah, the wallPen decathlon, like you're the top 10 skills that you can do. Edge to edge printing, pillar printing,
totally. Scaffold
pillar
like
printing. Is that a thing? Pillar printing? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can wrap your image around a 4-sided pillar, and so again, it's like it's multiple images, and you're lining up the edges, so you get this beautiful like seamless wrap. We did a job here in Toronto. Where we printed on 2 pillars, and like it was the first time we'd ever done it. We'd like, again, developed the technique kind of on the fly,
right?
But it's been sound, and we've this is where this community that we're talking about building really comes into play, because like we've shared this knowledge, but it's always been on an individual basis. So I'm in communication with operators in Poland and Italy and some of these global operators, and you give these tips, and you see your kind of process implemented, your procedure implemented with great success. You're like, all right, well, it works. It's not just me. We didn't luck out. We want to be able to kind of package that up and be able to offer it to everybody who's coming on board, right? Everything we're giving right now is kind of on an individual basis, but as soon as we can start helping our customers get all the resources they need at a click, at a glance, it's going to just make everybody's lives better and everybody's operations better.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because like my eyes lit up because I had no idea. I wasn't, again, like not thinking about this, but printing on a pillar. Like I would not have thought of that. And if I'm a first time operator and you've walked past an office building or whatever the case may be, and you've seen pillars and it's just like it's like, oh, there's an opportunity right there that I can go after. Right. Like it's good.
You know, it's a great one
yeah,
that I'm sure is going to come up eventually, but like keep coming back to parking garages. You know, you
mm-hmm.
take something that otherwise you just like got pillars in a parking garage as an ad space. Like it's just like all
Right.
of a sudden you're like, oh man, like you really could take something that's otherwise almost industrial, you know, and turn it into something that has some value to the real estate. Again,
Yeah,
there's just
definitely.
too much to do. You know, it's like at some point there's just too many applications. We got to get other people doing it, which is, you know, here we are selling wall pens.
The faster we can bring you up to what we call the frontier, the faster you're going to be printing on, you know, 3, 4, 5 stories of parking garages. You know, like that's there's a parking garage in your city right now that needs printing, and that's you know, five-figure business.
That's totally it. And it's cool to hear that you guys are like, even throughout your journey, you guys are trying things out. Like it's you just have to, right? You have to keep pushing the boundaries, can get as close as you possibly can to those edges, and just seeing how much you can do, because the opportunity is definitely out there.
Well, that's how we got started, right, man? I mean, we
Yeah.
started with a technology that is like, to say it was unproven is to give it too much credit. Like it was just like very conceptual. I mean, the early conversations with us was like, is this even can you even make money with this thing? Like nobody had ever sold a wall print in North America until we did one, right? And like, it's just fascinating when you start, like, you think back to where we go, it's like, to where we are now, it's like, man, what's the best application? Like, oh, what is like impossible for people to say no to? Like, I'm convinced museums are going to, like, it's going to just be a thing that in every city, that's all they're ever going to do.
Yeah.
The alternative is silk screening, which we know just all the challenges with vinyl are like, by comparison, this is the worst. You know, it's impossible to get consistent, reliable quality on in a reasonable time frame. So no, it's gonna be fascinating, man. There's definitely way more to come than we've currently left behind.
Yeah, I love the idea of parking garages, because my immediate thought is like, you know, when you're going up from P1 to P2, you have like those long, nice curved walls. Like, what a great opportunity for someone to put some information up on that wall, some sort of advertisement or whatever the case may be, or just to beautify the fact that you're instead of a parking garage. Like, I don't know, it's the opportunity is there. Like, I'm sure there's tons of buildings out there who'd want to beautify their parking
Well, how about
garages.
this, James? Let me ask you.
Intriguing.
When was the last time you saw a beautiful parking garage? Where is it?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm not saying there isn't one. I'm just saying, like, one of you. They all look exactly the same. By the way, in Germany and everywhere in the world I've ever been, parking garages have the exact same aesthetic. Rightfully so. It makes sense. But there's no reason it has to be like that. No.
Yeah, you think about, like, people are going back to the office and they're commuting into work. Like, what a great way to get people sort of, I don't know, in a cheerful mood to get. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but like, to get them in a cheerful mood to go sort of commute back home or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? It's just like that little bit of, like, I don't know, energy or light or whatever the case may be. I don't know. There's something
it's not ridiculous, man. I mean, I think it's an important mindset to get around when you start thinking about printing with a wall pen, is that you look at things through a certain lens and you ask yourself, why are they the way they are? A parking garage is the way it is because there hasn't been a solution to make it any better.
Right.
It's not because that's just the way it is. That's never the answer. It's it's because there isn't a solution to improve the space. Well, now there is a solution. Well, if people aren't aware of it, then it's going to remain the same way. But now that you have an opportunity to beautify these spaces, absolutely. We're talking about some of the prime real estate in downtown Toronto, New York, like some of these big cities, they have huge parking garages. They spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on beautifying their space. I mean, the TD building downtown, I think, has got like $100,000 art print that they change out every quarter in their main foyer, right? Like that type of stuff. The intention is there. If they could do it down below in their parking garages, they would, but they can't because there hasn't been a solution. With this technology now, you're going to constantly come up against the bounds of it is the way it is because, and now you have a solution to say, no, we can change that, and I think that's an important thing to constantly push towards as you're trying to change the way people think about graphics. It's inherently, we've been thinking about it in a certain way, and it's now possible to shift the paradigm, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. Is there any other projects, like, maybe that because I'm sort of looking through like the fishbowl kind of thing. It's like, are there any other like interesting projects that like are on the go right now that you've heard of? Like, it's great that people are printing on tiles. Like, there's parking garage. Is there anything else that me not even thinking like is possible that you can think of if I'm putting you on the spot here?
Tell him about, I mean, what about Justin, Tiz? You were just on a call with him. Like he's got a school versus school rivalry.
Just before we got started, and it's a huge print. I'm sure I'll ask him
60 feet.
Yeah, it's this massive like school name and logo. I'm sure you can picture, but the whole premise was the two rival schools. One of the rival schools got a piece of artwork done that you could see from the street. So this rival school wanted something similar, contracted Justin, one of our great operators out of South Carolina, to go in and do 60 feet. And he sent me the picture from the street. It's this massive like name of the school. It's awesome. It's very, very cool. But as it turns out, like, now the other rival school called him up and was like, love it, want it, need it. So it's just going to be hopefully this ping pong of like 80 prints going back and forth. Justin might make his bones just on these two schools going back and forth. But it is a very common story. It's probably the hardest one to not sound like we're cheap salesmen to say, but it's like this thing upsells every time people see it. Like they want more of it. It's crazy like how common that story is for the number of times we've done more than one print in one space, or the time we've come back and done more printing. And like once you see what it can do, and again, woe is me, that's the biggest challenge we have, is the education of the market of like, let me ask you a different question, right? If graphics weren't such a pain in the ass, would you consider, say, a smaller detail over here? One of my favorite prints still to this day that we did was in my house was a little blue jay. And it's a branch coming off the corner, and there's just a little blue jay sitting there. It was like a 9-minute print. It's just the tiniest little thing, maybe 18 inches or so in total. I love it, man. It's a really cool detail. Would I ever do it without a wall printer? Like, no, I would never put a sticker up. Like, I would never do anything like that. But, the idea that we can just add these little accents everywhere, like that opens up a whole question that like you just never really asked. You never asked, like, what about a small print? Don't think mural for a second. And don't think hanging a painting. What about just a whole bunch of tiny little characters that live in your space, like a Where's Waldo? Like, as you were describing,
that's awesome.
Anything to make you feel like you're like a little bit more engaging of a space. I mean, there's clear data about that in the workplace. That's why all these guys are, like what Silicon Valley did to the workspace. I mean, you look at like, we're always shaping around of like, how do we make you more productive? And how do we also like benefit mental health and some of these other things? And it's like, man, I can't think of a better word to describe some of the things you could do than like whimsy, like just a little bit of playfulness, where everything's so serious and sterile. And you know what I mean? Like there's lots of opportunity. I just don't think any other way of doing it makes a lot of good sense. Whereas a wall printer is like, man, I could see 100 little characters around an office being kind of a fun thing to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cause like, I mean, you can think about like certain companies may have like their branded character or whatever else. Yeah, you can just have that person around the office giving a wave, a smile. You can always change it up or whatever the case may be. And
it brings up a really interesting question. And this is maybe for another podcast we'll go into depth, because it's coming up more frequently with some of our longer range operators, people who've been around like 18 months. And it's what I'm calling product packaging. It's not a great way of describing it, but it's like, how are you going out there and selling the prints? Like, in what way are you packaging this up? So it's like, it's an easy example of this is per square foot or flat rate, right? And I always tell people, like, it just depends on who you're speaking to. Anyone in construction is going to want to do per square foot so that they can think through my budget relative to what I get for it. Anyone not in construction, like I'm like enough in construction. I'd rather just know what's my out the door cost here. So something like a brewery, car dealership, like those are much more flat rate of like, here's what the scope would entail and how you do it. But there's some other fascinating things that can kind of like, as you extrapolate that question, like really interesting things that you can do with it. One of the ones that I heard recently from one of our customers, Joel, as if you guys watch our podcast, you'll know, is selling a credit system. Like you buy 1,000 square feet, and then you can use them as you see fit, right? Which is interesting because that's something like I thought about. I was like, that's something where actually like you'll come in and do a little detail because like why not, right? Whereas if I had to flat rate you, we've got a $500 minimum fee to mobilize. Like you can see why all of a sudden that might open up other opportunities to print of like, let's just come in and print the guy's name on his door because like why not? We got the credits and then we can do this really custom cool thing. It's just we're hoping that like as you package this idea better, that like the question of what would you do differently with a new technology and graphics, all of a sudden you have a way of both mutually benefiting, right? Like I can charge you and it's great for me. You get what you want and it's really good value for you. And it opens the door to some other printing that potentially we wouldn't do otherwise, So really interesting product packaging. We'll do a podcast on all the various ways that we've looked at that and how we do it, because that probably does require, a little bit more in-depth conversation. But yeah, that's some of the stuff that, as Mark was saying, frontier questions. Those are definitely frontier questions. Yeah.
I love that. That makes sense. I mean, it's almost, I don't know if it's similar in a way of like a subscription service or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
You get X amount of prints kind of thing. Like, so people are so accustomed to that now, right? When you think about like Netflix and whatever else there may be out there.
For businesses who do seasonal turnover and things like that, that's a great way of doing it, right? Like,
yeah, that's right.
You buy for the year. We'll come in and every season we'll turn over your window displays or your front of your front of office displays and those types of things.
Guys, I love this. I absolutely love this. It totally makes sense. I mean, going back to the whole like mental health, getting people back into the office, any sort of like thing that you can do. Like, I mean, it's great to have snacks and drinks in the office, but like, it's those visuals, right? Yeah. Back to the wine and cheese. You see how I went full circle there?
Yeah, there you go, man. I love it. Yeah, the wine and cheese.
But yeah, it just goes beyond that, right? I mean, like, what are you providing your employees with, like, outside of just those snacks? Like, what are you doing? How do you make that environment more fun for them?
It's a great question. I mean, it goes to why, like, I call it Liam's wall, is because like when I print what Liam prints, like, first, I do love ragging on Liam. I'm sure you guys can all tell that.
Yeah, he's awesome. Do like that. He's good.
But like probably not, if we're being perfectly honest. Like, no, it's not at all what I would choose or my interest. But like, I had to take a step back when I thought about it, and it's just sort of like, should I be giving instruction to him? Like, should I be beyond like, okay, dude, I think like, you maybe want to think about this because you're gonna get better results. Like, should I be controlling? Because like, I had to sort of like step back and like, okay, let's reevaluate this. What am I trying to do with Liam? And where is this? And part of it was like realizing, well, he's the one that's going out and selling, and he's a talented enough artist that he's going to be doing the graphics. Like, who am I to tell you what to do? I can give you my opinion, and you should weigh that against what you want to do, what you think is best. Like, I shouldn't be telling you these things of like how to do it. And like, I think that's like, I hope we're 5 weeks into this, so we'll talk about culture, this like super in-depth understanding I have. But like, part of it is, I think, personalizing it for yourself, allowing the employee to have a bit of control, and so that they're getting the meaning they want. Because if all he's doing is printing my vision of it, like, that's not going to engage as much as being like, whatever you want. And I will say this. We were in the office last Wednesday, and like, we were leaving, as we typically do, to go get our children, which is always fun. But like, he stuck around because he wanted to print something. Am I going to get that same effort, like, I want to go and see it if I'm controlling what he's doing? So to bring that back to like, why would you want a credit system for your office? It's like, I don't know, if you get an office, shouldn't it be your office? Like, shouldn't you feel like, what I mean, you're getting what you want? And that's where this credit system's like, man, little touches 100%. Here and there. I love putting people sitting on top of light switches. It's one of my, like, I just love doing it. It makes me laugh every time I see it. Another, like, again, not cliche, but if you looked in the space, like turning the fire extinguisher into a scuba diver, you know what I mean? It's like just adding these nice personal touches so that the employees feel like engaged and it's theirs. And I think that's a really important part of anyone who's trying to build culture in their spaces. There has to be ownership. Otherwise, you're kind of just faking it. At the end of the day, like, what are you really signaling to them? So totally. Hopefully this opens that door. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, I know so many places that do like the seasonal parties and whatnot. Totally. So you have like Halloween costumes. There's Christmas. There's tons of other events throughout the year, Easter, all those types of things. Like, to have like a credit system or subscription service or whatever the case, and you're able to like, spruce up your area just a little bit more and give like those, just, I don't know, just make it a little bit better than a plain white wall. Is just so much more beneficial for your employees. I love it.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Guys, it was nice seeing you.
Yeah, likewise, man. This
is
a quick update.
I know you guys have calls to make, so I don't want to keep you too long. But no, good podcast and good to get the ball rolling again on this, and we'll go more in depth on some of these topics we talked about today, and definitely start that competition between the Toronto and Asheville office so people can see. Liam's 5 weeks in it, and he's already like just doing so well with the sales. Like, it's so awesome to see. So anyone who's out there still on the fence, wondering if this is for them, like definitely reach out to the guys at wallPen North America and get on a call with them. Very personable. And yeah, if you're on the fence, just give them a call and just talk it through. Watch some of the other podcasts to get more insight on the business itself. And yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. Anything else you guys want to say? Anything?
I'm sure hours, but I don't want to keep you guys here. So yeah,
check the socials. Our social marketing team is doing a great job, and it's a good kind of window into the day-to-day life of an operator, through our Concept Inc. pages, and then just kind of updates on the wallpen front on our vertical printers page. So it's a good way to kind of stay engaged with us in between podcast episodes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. See you guys. Talk to you soon.
James.
Cheers.
All right. Bye.